Our next art project is going to be inspired by famous abstract artist Paul Klee. Paul Klee was a German artist born in Switzerland on December 18, 1879. His father was a music teacher and his mother was a singer. From an early age, his parents wanted him to pursue music as a career, which he did to make them happy, but as he grew older, he felt like the classical music he was trained to play was too restricting. He wanted more freedom and more choice to be expressive, which led him to start experimenting with art and painting, which he immediately came to love. Klee is an abstract artist, which means his art does not resemble things as we see them in the real world. He used a lot of shapes, lines, and colors to create his paintings. His style is recognized by his use of simple shapes, particularly squares, and each shape has its own color. The painting that inspired our next project is called Once Emerged from the Gray of Night. There are a lot of squares, and inside each one is a different color. The words are actually in German and are from a famous poem that Klee enjoyed. What do you notice about his painting compared to the painting that we are going to create? Think about the similarities and differences as you are creating yours. First, hold your paper vertically, and we're going to use a Sharpie to add some curving, waving lines to break up the space and allow space for our letters. 3 lines will be just fine. We're going to use the letters that spell out your name. So I'm just writing Miss G because my name is really, really long. So I'm going to make it shorter by just writing Miss G. The trick here is when you finish writing your name, you're just going to continue writing the letters of your name along those lines. Write them really big so that they fill the whole space. So my letters are touching the top part of the line and the bottom part of the line. Just like in Paul Klee's painting, the letters create the spaces for the color inside those squares. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to emulate that same kind of idea on our artwork using the letters of your name. Okay, so again, you're repeating those letters, just continuing writing right off the edge of the paper. All right, so for our coloring, we're going to use those watercolor pencils again. And we've used these before in class when we did our Fauvism landscapes. Just pulling out colors that I'm going to use. Coloring with these watercolor pencils is probably what's going to take the most time. So I'm going to give you 2 days to finish your coloring. When you're coloring, if you want a lighter color, don't use as hard pressure. You don't want to press as hard. If you want a darker, more saturated color, go over it a few times with several layers of that color. I'm just going to continue finishing up here in hyperspeed. And then I will be back to explain what we'll do on day 3. Okay, here we are for day 3 and the final day of our Paul Klee name paintings. So what you want to do is when you're painting, especially because the spaces are really small, use the very pointed tip of your brush to get into some of those really small corners and along those edges of those lines. What I'm doing is I'm going very carefully along the edges, and then I'm using the belly of the brush to kind of push the paint around and make it spread. Anytime that your brush feels dry and feels like the paint isn't spreading out as well, just put it back into the water, wipe the extra off on the edge of the cup or the bowl, and just continue on. So I'm carefully going along those edges, using the tip, the pointy part of the brush, to get into some of those small corners and along those straight edges. Just as a quick reminder, anytime you want to change to a new color on your paper, make sure you wash off your brush and get it nice and clean before you switch colors to prevent any color mixing. Or I guess I should say any unwanted color mixing. If you want your colors to mix, then that's fine. But if you don't, make sure you clean off your brush. Okay, so here's my painting. It's all finished. I need to put this somewhere so that it dries. If you're in the classroom, this goes onto the drying rack along with your placemat. If you're at home, make sure you find a hard, flat surface to lay this on so that it dries properly. If you're in the classroom, take your brush to the sink. If you're learning at home, you need to wash your brush off with some soap and some water and let it dry. You want to let it dry with the brush part facing up into the air, or you can let it dry flat on your placemat or on a towel.